It's time for the top 20 most played Steam Deck games chart for November, and we have a lot of change this month. Let us know in the comments below what you've been playing, and be sure to check out the SDG Companion App on the App Stores. So let's get started with number 20. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, which is a re-entry into the chart. Trained from early childhood and mutated to gain superhuman skills, strength and reflexes, witchers are a counterbalance to the monster-infested world in which they live. Running at a decent 30 to 60 frames per second depending on your settings, 60 frames per second with high to medium settings in dungeons, and around 40 frames per second plus out in the outside world. In at 19 we have another re-entry of Monster Hunter World. With a massive 85,000 active players this week, take on the role of a hunter and slay ferocious monsters in a living, breathing ecosystem where you can use the landscape and its diverse inhabitants to get the upper hand. Running a lot smoother than it has in the past, with 50 to 60 frames per second now in the monster hunting world, but expect dips to 30 to 40 with the larger monsters and lots of players. At 18 we have Deep Rock Galactic Survivor up one place. Kill bugs, upgrade your gear and delve ever deeper into the lethal caves of Hoxes. Collect and assemble a devastating range of guns, unleash hell upon wave after wave of aliens within the cave walls. Running at a 60 to 90 frames per second solid until the hordes close in. You're going to have an absolute blast with this one, but don't expect 90 all the time. Another re-entry at 17 with Hades. As the immortal prince of the underworld, you'll wield the powers and mythic weapons of Olympus to break free from the clutches of the god of the dead himself, while growing stronger and unraveling more of the story with each unique escape attempt. Solid 90 frames per second on the OLED and 60 on the LCD, pushing 15 watts on the OLED, you'll get a good 3.5 to 4 hours gameplay with this one. Still in the charts but down one spot to number 16 is Slay the Spire. Choose your cards wisely, discover hundreds of cards to add to your deck with each attempt at claiming the Spire. Whenever you embark on a journey, the layout differs, so choose a risky or safe path. Solid 60 frames per second on the LCD or OLED, pushing only around 7 watts, meaning you'll get a good 7 to 8 hours on this one. Down 8 places to number 15 is Hades 2. As the immortal princess of the underworld, you'll explore a bigger, deeper mythic world, vanquishing the forces of the Titan of Time, the full might of Olympus behind you, in a sweeping story that continually unfolds through every setback and accomplishment. Like the first one, but with a bit better graphics, running at a solid 90 on the OLED and 60 on the LCD, but pushing that wattage a little bit higher, meaning only around 5 hours on the OLED for this one. At number 14, still in the charts, the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim Special Edition, up 4 spaces to number 14. Battle ancient dragons like you've never seen. As Dragonborn, learn their secrets and harness their power for yourself. Play as any type of character you can imagine and do whatever you want with the legendary freedom of choice from the Elder Scrolls. With all the mods you get to replay this like it's new, but pushing 22 to 25 watts with dragon fights and 50 to 60 frames per second, it's not all about the frames. An oldie but still a new entry thanks to the sales, Half-Life 2 is in at 13. The 7-hour war is lost, Earth has surrendered. The Black Mesa incident is a distant memory. Gordon Freeman is thrust into the unenviable role of rescuing the world from the wrong he unleashed back at Black Mesa, and a lot of people he cares about are counting on him. Capped to 60 frames per second but running absolutely solid on both the LCD and OLED, and pushing only 8 watts, meaning a good 6 to 8 hours on the OLED with this one. Dropping 8 places but still at number 12 is Diablo 4. The endless battle between the high heavens and the burning hells rages on as chaos threatens to consume Sanctuary. With ceaseless demons to slaughter, countless abilities to master, and nightmarish dungeons, the vast open world brings the promise of adventure and devastation. Still looking absolutely gorgeous, but pushing less than 60 in towns, but 60 to 80 out in the open world, consuming 23 watts. You're only going to get a couple of hours gameplay on this one. Red Dead Redemption 2 is back up 3 places to number 11. Arthur Morgan and the Vandalin gang are outlaws on the run. With federal agents and the best bounty hunters in the nation massing on their heels, the gang must rob, steal and fight their way across the rugged heartland of America in order to survive. Only getting around 30 to 40 frames per second, but looks absolutely gorgeous, especially on the OLED deck, but 23 to 25 watts, so you only get about 2.5 hours with this one. Holding on just about at the top 10 is Elden Ring. Rise tarnished and be guided by grace to brandish the power of the Elden Ring and become an Elden Lord in a vast open world. As you explore, the joy of discovering unknown and overwhelming threats awaits you. Pretty much only can get 30 frames per second on good looking settings with this one. I'm pushing 23 watts, so you have to strike a good balance between quality and power. Dropping 6 places but sticking in the top 10 is Metaphor ReFantazio. From the creative minds behind Persona 3, 4 and 5, a unique fantasy world where your protagonist will journey alongside his fairy companion to lift the curse from the kingdom's lost prince. Control your destiny, face your fears and awaken magical archetype powers that lie dormant in your heart. Battles run at a decent 60 frames per second, but around towns you do get some dips into the low 40s, well worth playing on the deck though. Up 3 places back into the top 10 though is Hogwarts Legacy. Still a little bit tough to run on the deck, pushing only around 30 to 40 frames per second and 23 watts power consumption still. Hogwarts Legacy is an open world action RPG set in the world first introduced in the Harry Potter books. Explore and discover with magical beasts, customize your character and craft potions, master spellcrafting and upgrade talents to become the wizard you want to be. Back into the top 10 by rising 5 places to number 7 is Cyberpunk 2077, an open world action RPG set in the awesome Night City, where you play as a cyberpunk mercenary wrapped up in a do or die fight for survival. Customize your character and playstyle as you take on jobs, build a rep and unlock upgrades, as your choices will shape the story and world around you. Running at a decent 30 to 40 frames per second in the main world, but up to 24 watts. You're going to be struggling to get 30 in Phantom Liberty, but still worth playing on deck. One of the best games on deck that I completely suck at is The Binding of Isaac Rebirth, re-entering the chart at number 6. A randomly generated action RPG shooter with heavy roguelike elements. Following Isaac on his journey, you'll find bizarre treasures that change your form and give you superhuman abilities to fight off droves of mysterious creatures and discover secrets on the way. Solid 60 frames per second on the LCD or OLED and under 7 watts, meaning you're going to get a good 7 to 8 hours gameplay. At number 5, rising 3 places, is Brotato. A spaceship from Potato World crashes into an alien planet. The sole survivor, Brotato, is the only potato capable of handling 6 weapons at a time, waiting to be rescued by his mates. Just over 7 watts on this one and a solid 90 frames per second on the OLED and 60 on the LCD. You can get a good 6 to 8 hours gameplay playing on this one. Still holding on in the top spots at number 4 is Baldur's Gate 3, dropping 2 places. Abducted, infected and lost. You're turning into a monster, but as the corruption inside you grows, so does your power. Caught in a conflict between devils, deities and sinister otherworldly forces, you'll determine the fate of the Forgotten Realms. Surprised this is still the most played on deck, as it struggles with 30 during a lot of Act 3, but is a great play up until that point. Heavy on the wattage though, so only expect a couple of hours away from battery on this one. Consistently up the top, but dropping to number 3 is Stardew Valley. You've inherited your grandfather's old farm plot, armed with hand-me-down tools and a few coins you set out to begin your new life. Especially with the expansions and the long battery time, getting a good 7 to 8 hours battery because it's only consuming around 6 watts with a solid 60 frames per second, you can see why this cozy game is still up the top. Back up 3 places though to number 2 is Balatro, probably due to the Game of the Year award nominations, and highly deserved. A poker roguelite where you combine valid poker hands with unique joker cards in order to create varied synergies and builds. Earn enough chips to beat devious blinds, uncover hidden bonus hands and decks as you progress. Solid 90 on the OLED and 60 on the LCD and around 6 to 8 hours gameplay, you can see why it's up the top. Back up 5 places though, reclaiming number 1 once again, is Vampire Survivors, a time survival game with minimalistic gameplay and roguelike elements. All you can do is survive as long as you can until death inevitably puts an end to your struggles. Only around 8 watts and solid 90 frames per second on the OLED and 60 on the LCD now. You can see why this has jumped right back up with all of the latest DLCs available. That's the top 20 most played games on Steam Deck for November. Be sure to let us know in the comments below what you've been playing and what your most played game has been. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.